Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Headline. This is where we pick an article and dig in, unpack with a subject matter expert. We talk about what the piece got right, wrong, other ways to think about it, to hear directly from the people with the boots on the ground perspectives. So today, I'm really excited to be talking with Michelle Marcelline. She's the co-founder of the Prompting Company. I'll tell you a little bit about her and then we'll jump right in. Michelle with the Prompting Company. So, really, what they do in a nutshell is they help companies and products get mentioned in AI searches. So, not just understanding how to use AI, but really how these organizations need to be thinking about the broader impact on communications, discovery, and brand visibility. So, the Prompting Company has already had a lot of success. It's backed by Y Combinator, already raised 6.5 million in seed funding. And then Michelle herself, this isn't her first go around. She is a two-time founder. She has had several companies get acquired already, and she's also Forbes 30 under 30 recipient. So she's been busy. So Michelle, what do folks need to know? What didn't I cover? What should folks know about you or the Prompting Company that they didn't get in your formal bio?
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro, Lisa, and thank you so much for having me. I think your intro really covers it. I don't know what else that is not included. Maybe the fact that I was an immigrant, I was born and raised in Indonesia, and that I got inspired to do all of this tech thing from a movie. So one day I randomly went to the theaters and watched the Social Network with my parents. And that's where I knew about apparently you can still invent something, can still build, yeah, invent something new and not just work at an office. And that is where I learned about tech, started listening to Steve Jobs' keynotes, started to immerse myself in the tech world, and forced my parents to send me to the US, but specifically San Francisco Bay Area for me to be here.
Okay. Very cool. I love that. That's definitely a great part of your story. And it makes sense why you were like, I need to be in Silicon Valley. Get me to the Bay. That's really cool. I love that. So, and how long have you been in the US now?
I have been here for 11 years now. I went here in 2015 for college.
Awesome. Great. And yeah, as I mentioned in your bio, for the folks to know, you've been in the startup world, as we were talking about, kind of in the hustle and the grind of it, but I'm sure you love it, being around all those folks. But having done Y Combinator several times, I saw on your LinkedIn like a picture with Sam Altman. So you're in the thick of it over there, and I'm sure that that kind of keeps you on your toes all the time.
Yeah, it's been great being in the startup world. It's everything I've ever dreamed of.
Amazing. I love that. Cool. Well, I'm really excited about our conversation today because being on the PR side, we're constantly thinking about this as well in the sense of how do we get our clients to show up in AI engines and how does the PR piece kind of play into that? So you and I are doing very different things, but there's very much an interconnectedness. And so that's why I was really excited to have this conversation with you today. So we're going to be talking about an article that published in Fast Company. It was called Why AI Visibility, GEO, and AEO Are the Future of Marketing. So let's jump right in. So they talk about how marketers need to start thinking about AI visibility and not just traditional SEO. So for folks who may be listening who are hearing terms like GEO or AEO for the first time, can you break it down for them and explain what that is?
Yeah, of course. I hope that everyone here is familiar with the term SEO, so search engine optimization. It is how you optimize your brand to be visible on Google because if you're not in the first page or even the first 10 pages of Google, your brand is practically impossible. This is the same concept, but for AI. So you want your brand to be recommended by ChatGPT. For example, if I go to ChatGPT and ask, what is the best moisturizer for dry skin? You want your brand to be listed by ChatGPT because as search shifts from Google to AI answers, if you're not mentioned there, you're practically impossible. You're practically invisible.
Hmm.
Mm.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I think on a my husband and I always talk about this on a day-to-day basis. Folks are starting to use it in so many facets, just in their day-to-day life, to your point, asking for product recommendations, things, how to do this in my home or whatever it may be. And so it's really not only from a business perspective, it's how can we think about AI in the everyday applications that people are already using them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that breakdown. So just thinking about some of the kind of features. So the piece talks about how AI tools are becoming a new interface for search and discovery. And so I'm curious from your perspective, are we looking at an overall evolution of search, or is this something more transformative than that?
Yeah, I think this is a new way of search. So before, people would go to Google, and since Google cannot understand full sentences, you tend to phrase your question into keywords and just enter the keyword to the Google search box. Now that LLMs or AI actually understand what a question is, what we see change is that people would type full sentences into ChatGPT. They would even describe their problem in detail, right? You wouldn't just, if you were to Google search, you would just type moisturizer. But if you go to ChatGPT, you would describe your entire life's problem. For example, I just traveled to Indonesia, which is where I'm from, and the weather there is so different. It's so humid. My skin gets oily. I am now back, but I have these and that new skin problems. What kind of moisturizer should I use? So you would, yeah, describe your problem in detail, and you will let the AI find the keywords that they should use to query the search engine and give you the result. So I think there's a shift there. It's better for us because we get more relevant results, and we get faster results too. Because back then, when you search on Google, you would end up having to click on people's different blog articles. Some of those articles are outdated, containing products that are no longer in the market. Whereas with AI, they made sure that they perform the research for you, and they would give you the name of the product, the link that you can just click and purchase.
Hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, it makes complete sense. So we could go on a tangent, a deep dive for quite a while, just digging into the intricacies of
Yeah.
SEO and GEO and everything. But for marketers, so what should they be thinking about in terms of optimizing for search engines versus optimizing for AI systems? You touched on it a little bit, but how do marketers just need to like completely shift their mindset, and like what are some of the things that they should be doing?
Yeah. Um, so there are two things that a marketer should track. The first one is their brand's visibility in AI answers. So they should come up with a list of questions that their potential buyers are looking for them for. For example, if again you're selling moisturizers, then you should come up with questions like, what is the best moisturizer for dry skin? What is the best moisturizer I can get in Sephora? What is the best moisturizer for oily skin? So you can go deep into the features that you have, like if it contains ceramide, things like that. You can also go deep into the persona, right? In this case, dry skin, oily skin combination, someone who just travels, the use cases as well. Run it across different AI models. So you run it on ChatGPT, run it on Perplexity, on Google AI, Claude, and see how many times your product is mentioned. That there you can get this term called share of voice, which is how often you are mentioned in AI answers. AI is probabilistic, so the key here is for you to run it across different engines and multiple times, so that number you get will be the average. So that is the first metric that you should care about. The second one is AI traffic. So what we do here is once you know the prompts in which you're mentioned and the prompts in which you're not mentioned at, you would create content for the prompts that you're not mentioned so that your content is cited by AI and therefore your product recommended. Because for you to be visible in AI, you need to create content. AI wouldn't know that your moisturizer is good for dry skin if you don't have any content about moisturizer for dry skin.
Mhm.
So the action that you can take here is to create a bunch of content around moisturizers with dry skin. If possible, create some comparison with other moisturizers and why your moisturizer is the best one for certain conditions, of course. And then have that content be picked up by AI so that your product is recommended.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing some overlap. Obviously, like back in the day when SEO just became a term and people were analyzing how do you increase SEO. Yes,
Uh,
it's content and it's, creating all those pages with those specific keywords and there are parallels here, but I love that we can use AI to figure out where those gaps are and how to fill them by prompting, no pun intended with the prompting company, prompting it to help you figure out exactly what types of content kind of fill in those
Yeah,
pieces that are missing.
exactly.
Exactly. Very cool.
Then
Cool.
after you publish the content, I would say it's pretty similar to SEO as well, such that you need to monitor the performance of the content that you publish. We have a tool to help you know the specifically AI traffic coming into the content that you've published, because this is your way of knowing on whether or not your content is being picked up by AI and if there's actual demand from AI for your content.
Mm. I, that's great. I love that. I'm sure that folks are wanting some sort of tool like that because we always, of course, want to be able to measure things. And so getting the proof of seeing exactly where the traffic comes from. And again, for me as a PR person, I'm thinking about so many things because these are all tools and use cases that we think about in our industry as well. And leveraging tools like Muck Rack, for example, which is what we do kind of in our world to reach out to press, just seeing that they, for example, also recently included a tool where you can track are your articles showing up in search engines. So again, it's very much all intertwined. It's going to be interesting over the years to see which tools, continue to beef up and outperform and alter and it's just fascinating. I think how quickly it's all happening.
Yeah.
But you mentioned share of voice too. Again, in our world, a common term that we use as well in terms of looking at share of voice between the competitors, and we're using it in a way of showing up in press articles. So I'm curious, can you unpack the share of voice side of things a bit more in terms of how y'all are analyzing it and using it?
Yeah. So it's exactly what you said just now. We determine the share of voice by prompting with the prompting company. So what we do is come up with a list of questions. The questions has have to be as long-tailed as possible. We would make it specific to a certain feature, a certain use case, or a certain persona. Let's say from the top 5 topics that you want to track about your brand, you end up with 100 different prompts. You would run each prompt across 4 different models, so ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI, and Claude, multiple times a week. Right now, we run it every day. So you have 100 prompts times 4 engines times 7 days a week times 4 weeks in a month, right? You will have you will have thousands of different runs, and you can see, let's say if your product is mentioned in ChatGPT when I run it today, your share of voice is 100%. Let's say I run the exact same question on Google AI and it's not mentioned, your share of voice is down to 50% because I run it twice and you're only mentioned once. And then I ran it again on Claude and your mentions. So now we have two mentions of three runs. So your share of voice is up to 67%. So you keep on doing that thousands of times. And let's say that final number is 30%. That means that that is your average share of voice. Yeah.
Okay, great. No, thanks for breaking that down. And with simple numbers for somebody that's not so good at math, so thank you for that. So I'm curious, so we've talked a little bit about it, but what are there any, hands down, hard line in the sand things that marketers or brands definitely need to be doing to get their content surfaced by AI?
Mhm. Right now it's mostly identifying the gaps. So first you would need to use our tool to understand which prompts you're winning, as in your brands are constantly mentioned for those kind of questions, and know which prompts in which you are not winning. So these are the prompts where you think your product should have been mentioned, but they're not. And usually it's because you don't have enough content touching those topics that what you should do now is to create content that touches those topics. And our platform gives you the ability to auto-generate the content as well, based on the information that we understand about your business, as well as based on the articles that are mentioned. So when we run the prompts across different engines, when you use ChatGPT, they would give you a list of answers in the form of text, and they would give you the URLs that they cite as proof as to where they got the answers. Those URLs are what made your competitors mentioned. So when you generate article using our tool, we will generate it based on your company's information, but as similar as possible to the articles that are cited. Because if those articles are cited and we create something similar, then our article will also be cited. The difference is our article contains information about your product. So your product will be recommended next time.
Okay. And just to clarify too, when you say the articles, are you talking about within the company's website, like blogs or different pages on the site, or are you talking more external?
What we help is internal right now, so you can publish it within your website. But if you choose to repurpose that into a LinkedIn article, you can always do that.
Mhm.
Into a Reddit post, whatever that is.
Okay. I'd imagine, again, just with kind of all facets of marketing, the repurposing in various different ways is just going to amplify and increase
Yeah.
everything that's being fed into it. So in our world, we always say if you have one piece of content, if you can repurpose it 10, 15 different ways,
Yeah.
whether that's through the newsletter, through the blog, through the social, all the different social
YouTube
channels,
video, LinkedIn, TikTok. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Okay. So you're providing them with a base, like here, we need this all on your website. So forming different pages, blog posts, maybe amplifying some of the language that's being used there, and then those organizations in theory taking that and, amplifying through the different waves as well to accompany it.
Yeah. They can also check our analytics to see the kind of URLs that are cited by these LLMs. So let's say if they check their analytics and a lot of the URLs are Reddit posts, then they know that they should focus on creating Reddit posts. If a lot of the URLs that are cited are company-owned blog posts, then they can just use our platform and publish the blog post on their company website. If a lot of them are TikTok links, then they should use our brief to generate a script for TikTok and create a TikTok video. So it really depends on the analytics. It varies per industry as well. I imagine for our example moisturizer, there will be a lot of TikTok videos, but for some tech companies, probably posts on Hacker News, other developer tools like dev.to.
Mhm. Awesome. Love that. Yeah, any other, sorry, going off tangent, but any other specific industries or companies based on who y'all work with at the prompting company that, just kind of industries that you're continuing to see growth already in this area?
Yeah, I think we're seeing the most growth in e-commerce. So our early customers are developer tools, because developers naturally use AI as part of their daily workflow. Even though they're developers, they started computer science for the longest time. They still use tools like Cursor or now Claude Code to vibe code or be their coding assistant at least, right? So let's say you finish building a web app using Cursor, and now you want to send a welcome email to everyone who signs up. It's just so natural for them to ask their AI sidebar, and ask for a tool recommendation for them to send a welcome email. So their AI assistant would recommend, for example, resend, and their AI assistant will just add the resend code snippet to their code, and they would have to go to Resend's website and grab an API key for it to work. But yeah, it's so natural for developers to discover tools through AI. So our initial target was developer tools, and then it branched out to other tech companies, like Zapier, Snapchat, NVIDIA, and then I would say the majority of people are using the internet in general to shop. So I would say the largest target and the last one that we need to tackle and that we have started going in would be e-commerce.
That makes sense. I think again, it's so intertwined into just general search, but next level. I think, everybody has always started with find me the best backpack, top 10 backpacks for hiking with a built-in water bottle. It's
Yeah.
Camelback and all those different things. But, we're so used to searching different prompts. And that's why, frankly, all these publishers have all these top ranking websites where it's the products and it's all intertwined to the brands that they're featuring and the link backs and all of those kinds of searches that people were doing in Google, I think are very quickly going to be shifting now into whichever search engine that they use. So they're going to be looking for that top 10 list with recommendations in ChatGPT, Claude, etc. So to your point, it makes sense to go after all those e-commerce brands because you want to help them show up
Yeah,
there.
exactly. I think if we're targeting developer tools, we're only targeting a subset of people. If we're targeting software, we're only targeting working people who are in tech. But if we're targeting e-commerce, we're basically targeting the entire world, including you and me, right?
Exactly. 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 So the just thinking back to the article, so when they're talking about traditional search, I think they say that AI visibility will soon become as important as traditional search rankings. Do you agree? Do you think it's even more important? Kind of break it down for us, your take.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. I either agree or I would say it's going to be even more important because when people go to AI to search for something, they really have a high intent. I would say that the intent is even higher than a Google search because they go to AI with a certain problem. They would describe their problem in detail. So once AI spits back out an answer to them, it's very likely that they will go ahead and convert, either a paying customer if it's a software or purchase the product if it's an e-commerce, because the answer is very targeted, specific to your problem. Whereas if it's a Google search, the only keyword that I would enter to Google is moisturizer. So if the first 10 recommendations are not catered to my problem, then I probably wouldn't convert.
Hmm. That makes complete sense. I mean, yeah, now we've been trained to want custom feedback at the tip of our fingertips at all times now, which is a pretty incredible thing, obviously. So you want to be able to tailor what's coming out to the people so that they get exactly what they need.
Yeah, exactly. And if they get exactly what they need, then what's the reason for them not to convert?
Definitely. So I'm curious. You've been obviously living in Silicon Valley for quite a while now. You're surrounded by all the tech folks. So do you think this transition, I guess, well, to bring it down to specifically what we're talking about, the transition from Google, for example, to these AI models to search for different things. Obviously, it's happening now, but in terms of the larger transformation where we feel like this is where we're going, do you think it's gonna happen in the next couple months, in the next couple years, five? Like, how quickly do you foresee this all happening on a
Yeah,
larger scale?
I think it is already happening. So when ChatGPT first launched in late 2022, only tech people uses ChatGPT. I would say even till this day, not many people that are outside of tech use ChatGPT, or at least they're not subscribed to the pro version of ChatGPT. Um, but I would say a majority of them still use Google search, but when you search on Google right now, do you actually scroll through the 10 blue links or do you just look at the AI overviews result? If you look at the AI overviews, which is on top of your page, then you're essentially using Google AI and not using Google search. Yeah.
Touche. Nicely put. I think when they made the transition, folks probably didn't even realize, like, oh, I have this summary now, and
Yeah.
they didn't even really think much about it. But then you,
Yeah.
to your point, you stop scrolling because you're like, this is way easier, and this gives me exactly
What
what I
I wanted.
need.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But
Yeah.
I will call out like with that, and I'm curious your take too, but I always do my little like caveat because I've been trying to use AI more and more and more, obviously in every facet of my life. We work with all tech companies, so we're immersed in it as well.
Yeah.
But as I do feel like I always need to throw out the caveat though of doing the homework and not just taking it as it is. And obviously things are evolving quickly and getting more and more accurate.
Mhm.
But even a couple weeks ago, I had somebody send, I was working with a producer and they sent me something validating one of my clients' bios. And they said, oh, so he previously worked here. And I saw and I said, that does not look right. Let me double check that. I don't remember him ever saying that he worked there. And I
Yeah.
looked it up and I Googled it. I was like, where is this coming from? And it was part of the summary. And what
Okay.
happened was that this gentleman, he was mentioned on another website where he was on the board, and
Yeah.
this other person from that website worked at this company, and they pulled it in and just immediately put his name with this title, which was not accurate. They just
Oh.
were mentioned on the same website together. So, and that's so I quickly found it and I said, oh, this is obviously what happened. They just looked at the summary and
Yeah.
they put it together, but it's not right. So I have those moments and I always feel like I need to be the person that raises my hand and say, do your homework. It's there's still problems. And I'm
Yeah.
curious for you if you feel the same way or if you see things in your day to day.
Yeah. I think hallucinations happen a lot, but it has certainly been better and better since the first time I used AI back in late 2022. And it has gotten more and more easier to fact check. Because right now they don't just give you answers in the form of text, they always add the URLs that they use to come up with that answer. So it would be helpful if we always check the citations, go into some of the URLs, at least check the things that you think are a bit iffy or you're unsure of, make sure that it is taking the correct part from the website, right? I think there can always be the case where the name is generic enough. Let's say the name is Brian Smith. There are probably 1,000 of Brian Smith in this world. So it's always helpful for you to actually go to the citation and cross-check if it's the right Brian Smith that we're talking about.
Definitely. The verification piece.
Yeah.
You'll thank yourself later on for taking the couple extra minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also the same as us when we run our tool. We have a couple layers of fact checking. So when we generate articles, after we identify the gap in which you need to create content, when we generate the content itself, we don't do it in one shot. We actually have um, a couple of different steps for us to generate an article. So we would first gather information about your company. We gather information about the problem itself and what other people have written about how they solve the problem. we would come up with a content brief. It's just bullet points of it's like when you want to write an essay, you don't go and write the essay right away, right? You would write the bullet points first, and then we would give it to the user for them to confirm the bullet points if they want to edit anything, if something is hallucinating. Once the content brief is solid, we have another step in which we verify the writing style, make sure if it's an e-commerce, then make sure the tone is casual. If it's a developer tool, then we want to be the thought leader in this space, so it has to be more professional. And then we go ahead and generate the article because I think, and we have AI for each step. So one AI that specifically does the researching, one AI that specifically determines the tone of the article, one AI that generates the content brief because each AI is trained to do different things and it can fact check different things.
Amazing. I love that. Yeah, thanks for breaking down kind of the process for us. It's so helpful to understand, like if I were one of your customers, what that process would look like. And I think we've talked quite a bit, but is there anything else in terms of specific steps that companies should be taking to improve their visibility in AI search?
Yeah, I think right now, since this concept is fairly new, for marketers out there, I would recommend at least knowing where you stand in terms of AI visibility. And you can use our tool to check that. If you decide to take the next step in which you want to increase that AI visibility, then we should talk.
Love it. You gotta get the pitch in there.
Yeah.
I love it. But
I
yeah,
get
it,
them
it is.
selling all the time, right?
You're a star friend. That's what you have to do. But yeah, I think it's a great call out just in terms of getting a baseline of where you're at, right? Because if you're just kind of starting and just making assumptions or, without doing a full sweep, you don't know what you don't know. And that's what I always say to myself and to my team. And honestly, just using all these different platforms. I started with chat. Now I'm very into Claude right now. And it's learning how to use the tools. You don't know what you don't know. So by getting in there and testing different things and just spending the time and working out the product, you're going to your point, see where those gaps are. So I think doing that initial kind of discovery phase analysis is so important to get a baseline of where the work still remains.
Exactly. I think you summarized it perfectly
Yeah,
there.
thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm curious your take. So either whether it's kind of working with, what you're doing at the prompting company and working specifically with your customers and partners, or just kind of out in the world in Silicon Valley, any specific trends in AI generally that you're really keeping a close eye on as it relates to marketing and search visibility?
Yeah, in terms of the trend in general, are you asking about what kind of AI tools or products people are building these days?
I'd love to hear it. Yeah, just kind
Yeah.
of the things that you're like, I need to keep a close eye on this right now because something is happening.
Yeah, I think the trend in general is shifting from 5 years ago, people used to build software for a human to use, right? But with the with AI, your goal is to replace someone's workflow, replace a certain workflow, or if possible, a certain person, right? If you're a law firm, you're trying to replace the paralegals. If you are a generic clerical office, you're trying to replace the admin or someone with repetitive work. And AI is really good at understanding a repetitive workflow and replacing it. So the with AI, the trend that I'm seeing is to identify the most repetitive workflow within a certain industry and try to replace that.
Hmm. It's scary, but
Yeah, it
but
is scary, but I think,
necessary.
yeah, with the existence of podcasts like Beyond Trending, it helps people to be more aware about um, what is actually happening in this world so that they can be prepared for. their job to be replaced and like potentially find a new job that is not as repetitive so that yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I'm not like a doomsday, like the world is ending kind of person, but I am a realist.
Yeah.
And I like to have conversations that very much open the door to this is happening. And yes, it's not news. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And a lot of people, to your point, the AI is replacing tasks. And that's that. But there are also huge opportunities. So let's talk about the huge opportunities. Let's talk about the ways that this can really benefit our
Mhm.
workflows, our companies, our interactions, our time. I think about it from a very personal perspective. How can I use AI to give me more time with my
Yeah.
family, working less or whatever it may be? So there are huge upsides to it. And I think it's really just our mindset. Are we going to fight against this or are we going to say, let's grab the bull by the horns and
Yeah.
take advantage? And how is this going to benefit us?
Yeah, I think so. I think with every technology, people are going to be shocked in the beginning, but we have to know that we are creative beings and that we will always adapt with the development of this world. And one thing that we need to know for sure is that technology will not only take our jobs, it'll actually enable more. I think one um, thing that I like to say to my friends is last time there was no freeways or there were no freeways or highways, but with the invention of freeways or and highways, does it get less crowded? Like, do we have more traffic or less traffic? I think the answer is more traffic, right? But it just enables people to travel more. Before the invention of car, you used to only travel in your area, maybe a 1 mile radius for a lot of people. Now that there are cars, you travel between states. Now that there are airplanes, you travel to different countries. So I think it's not only stopping you from doing a certain thing, but it's enabling you to do more, and there will be more job opportunities for you to take. It's just going to be a different kind of job.
It's just a transition period.
Yes, it's just a transition period, and that there will be more jobs for us to take on.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Because if we open the universe, there will be more problems to solve, right?
That's very true. That's very true. We're solving lots of problems, but we're also creating more. So we'll be
Exactly.
busy. We'll be busy
Yeah,
for a
we'll be
while.
busy. Yeah, we'll be busy. We'll definitely have jobs.
Yes, touche. Well, I'm curious, anything else that we covered so much, but I guess for folks who want to learn more about what you are building at the prompting company, how
Mhm.
can they learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I am on LinkedIn. I'm Michelle Marcelline on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. I'm trying to at least do one post or research a week. And in terms of if they want to learn about Prompting Company, you can just go to promptingcompany.com. We have a 7-day free trial. With a free trial, you can see your brand's visibility, and if you decide to act upon it, you can sign up and use our tool to do that.
Amazing. Very cool. Yeah, we're going to have to connect online because, again, from a PR perspective, we're thinking about the same thing. How do we get our clients to show up? So we may have to figure out a way that we can collaborate to have that visibility for our clients and kind of see how they're looking with that initial discovery. Awesome. Well, Michelle, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this with us, and we'll see you next time.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Lisa.